Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you as always for tuning in. In today's video, I thought I might try something a little bit different, and as you can see, I have created a tier list. Now, I love tier lists, I don't know about you, but I think they're a very fun way to engage with any given topic in a, specified region, I suppose. You can't tier list every topic in the world, but this topic today is superpowers, and specifically what the best superpower is. Now, I'm not going to beat around the bush or anything. I'm just going to come right out and say it. My favorite superpower that I would want the most whenever somebody asks if you could have only one superpower, what would it be? It's very simple. It is flight. So flight is going straight into the S tier. In my opinion, flight, very spiritually, I suppose, represents freedom. I feel like there's a lot of things you can do with the power of flight. It gives you the ability to go wherever you want, whenever you want, and you look really cool doing it. Now, of course, in the practical world, there's no real way for humans to ever be able to fly unassisted. We don't have hollow bones. If we were to have proportionate wings to lift our body mass off the ground and create enough thrust, I believe, if I'm remembering this correctly, they would need to be like 20 feet. You would need a wingspan of like 20 feet in order to generate enough thrust to lift the average person off the ground. So not a lot of practical ways to achieve that. Of course, we don't have jetpacks or flight suits like the Falcon does in the Marvel movies. But either way, I would still love to fly. Of course, I've been in some skydiving simulators before. I've never gone and done it myself, but one of these days, maybe I will go jump out of a perfectly good airplane or do some parasailing or something to experience that sort of sensation. Now, in a similar vein, in sort of another method of transportation, is super speed. Now, super speed doesn't appeal to me as much as flight does, but I can see a lot of benefits for having it, depending, of course, how fast your super speed actually is. Even if it's, only like just a little bit above Usain Bolt, I feel like that would still, be a very nifty power to have. Of course, if you have like Flash level of speed, or like Wally West, if we're pushing the boundaries there, speed just makes everything trivial. And I'm not super into the idea of having a superpower just to trivialize everything. I feel like that would get boring pretty fast, but I can understand why some people would enjoy that, right? I think there needs to be at least some resistance in the world, right? That's what makes us better. That's what makes us stronger. So speed, a little bit further down for me than flight, but still very useful superpower. Next, for keeping things in the transportation realm is, as I flubbed there, teleportation. And again, I feel like this just makes things too easy, right? Of course, maybe there's a limited range, right, that you might be able to teleport to. Maybe you can't teleport through objects. I don't know. There are limitations that you could implement, but teleportation still an incredibly useful superpower. But on the whole, I wouldn't take it over flight. I probably would take it over super speed though, just because it's cooler. And depending, of course, on the super speed, it functions pretty much the same way. But not my preferred. Next, moving to a new category, we have super strength. Super strength. Now, super strength, when I was younger, was more in contention for the kind of thing that I might pursue, right? I was a huge Hulk fan as a kid. Huge Hulk fan. I watched, I don't remember the name of the cartoon. It was one of the Disney XD cartoons with the Avengers, and the Hulk, whenever he was on an episode, that was, that was likely going to be my favorite episode. My big favorite superheroes were Hulk and Spider-Man as a kid. And of course, that was the era where Marvel's big three was Wolverine, Spider-Man, and Hulk. And, I fell right into that pipeline. I was a huge fan of all three of them, but the Hulk for sure was my favorite. So super strength, just, for that reason, right, for being a Hulk truther, needs to be up on this list. Now, I would hope it doesn't come with the uncontrollable rage that the Hulk feels, but still, an incredibly useful superpower. Next, telekinesis. Now, I hope I spelled this right. Telekinesis. I believe that's how you spell it. Telekinesis. Now, I don't want to make presumptions about you, my trusted and wonderful viewer, but if you are anything like me, there came a time in your youth when you fully convinced yourself that you had the ability to move objects with your mind. I cannot think of a kid that I grew up with that didn't at one point believe if they had just concentrated hard enough, they would be able to move an object through sheer force of will. Now, of course, that never happened, but could you imagine for a moment, dear viewer, if you actually had the powers of telekinesis, how useful that would be? It would be incredibly useful. You could summon things right to your hand, like the Accio spell in Harry Potter, not to be too obsessed with pop culture or anything, but telekinesis, I feel like, is a very classic superpower that a lot of people are always wishing that they had. And, I can't blame them. Telekinesis is incredible. Now, would I take it over some of these? Maybe over super speed, maybe over teleportation. I don't think I would take it over super strength, but telekinesis, I think, fits very nicely here in the A category. Now, moving on to a power, we're going to jump down a little ways here that I think is absolutely overrated and useless. We are going to put as our first D tier, X-ray vision. Now, I think most of the people that answer this question of what superpower would you like to have with X-ray vision are not to be trusted under any circumstance, all right? Don't trust those people. They want to use this power for malignant purposes, okay? They are dastardly people that want X-ray vision as their superpower. It's not something that I would ever pick for myself. Now, I really can't even think of any situation where X-ray vision would come in handy other than for devious purposes, if you catch my drift. But we're not going to go there. In a similar vein, I'm going to put invisibility in the B tier, just because I think it's another one that invisibility. I think I spelled that right. I don't know, but I think invisibility is another one of those powers that people answer the question with, where it's just one of those things where you can't really trust them, Ryan. You cannot just look at that and say, oh, you're using that for good. But I think it has more uses than X-ray vision, right? Invisibility, you could sneak around, you could, do some deep-seated espionage if you had the ability, right? If you had invisibility as a superpower, I feel like you would be immediately targeted by governments so that they could create technology that could detect you, even if you were invisible, or they could recruit you to be a spy. So I feel like of all the superpowers on this list so far, invisibility is the one that will most likely get you experimented on. Next on the list, this might be controversial, but I'm going to put telepathy. Hold on. Telepathy into the D tier. Mostly because I don't want to know what other people are thinking. Okay? I don't need to read minds. The persuasion aspects maybe could be useful, right? If you're, sneaking into a movie theater, you hit them with a Jedi mind trick, I have a ticket, whatnot. Of course, I feel like it's another one that could be abused fairly quickly, but telepathy to me just doesn't really feel like a very useful superpower. Um, it's not something that I think I would use personally myself, but maybe you have a different, um, a different idea for that. But for me, that's not on my thing. Next, let's talk about healing factors. Healing factors, I think, should go staunchly in the A tier. Now, maybe you could even argue this should go up a tier just because it's super overpowered. But being able to heal injuries, but I think it would have to come with a caveat, right? The thing that I think keeps healing factors out of the S tier is you still feel pain, right? You still feel every bullet that goes through your skin, that I think would sort of keep it down. And my goodness, just good lord, it is late at night and there are a billion people, it feels like, just driving around right now. But whatever. Healing factors, if you can still feel pain, I feel like kind of need to come down just a little bit, despite the fact that they are super overpowered, because I don't really want to be feeling, all that nonsense, right? Especially a broken bone, okay? Luckily for me, I haven't broken a leg or anything like that. I broke my nose once. I was playing, I can't remember if it was football or soccer or frisbee or what it was, but I was playing sports, and I think it was frisbee. Yes. No, it's coming back to me now. I was playing frisbee, and I was playing over the middle of the field. The frisbee had been thrown. It was up in the air. I was running after it. Bravely, I might add. I was running after the frisbee. And I went to make a grab for it, and the defender on the enemy team, the defender was a much larger man. Okay, this guy was a basketball player. He was like one of the best athletes at my high school, 6'6", 300 pounds. This was a massive, massive dude. So I'm making a play for the frisbee, and he's jumping at the same time I am to make a play on this frisbee as well. And as I jumped straight into this man's elbow. Okay? Just full on, right at him, right into this guy's elbow. And unfortunately for me, that broke my nose. And it wasn't super painful immediately, right? There was definitely some pain there. I felt a little nauseous. I went down to the ground for a minute and just sort of sat there, banged my head, banged my hand, put my fist into the dirt and just, screamed out for a quick second. But it wasn't super painful beyond that. But I can imagine, for instance, if you broke your leg, I knew some guy who was doing some sort of construction job, and I don't know if he fell off a ladder or what happened, but he broke his leg, and he told me it was the most painful experience he's ever had in his life, and I feel like I would like to avoid that. So healing factors, I don't think, should go into the S tier for now. Let me think here. Another superpower that I think maybe comes with a bit of a caveat is pyrokinesis. So we'll put that in B, pyrokinesis. Now, of course, creating your own fire, right, sounds awesome. But I feel like this is another one that would immediately get you hunted down by a government somewhere if you were this, pseudo infinite energy source. And I feel like this could be true for pretty much all energy-based superpowers, right? Whether it's lightning manipulation, fire manipulation, energy absorption, anything like that. I feel like this would get you hunted down by governments and experimented on. But in the right circumstances, having your own personal portable fire, it sounds pretty good. But I feel like, in most cases, it's a bit of a lamer superpower. Let me think. Heat vision is another one that I think could go here in the B tier. Heat vision. Definitely more useful than X-ray vision, but again, how often are you going to be using it, right? You could use it to light fires. You could use it maybe to fight enemies. Other than that, not really sure it's all that useful. Let me think. Is there any more superpowers that I want to put on this list right this moment? We've got speed, strength, flight, teleportation, invisibility, X-ray vision, telepathy, pyrokinesis, telekinesis, super healing. I think that about intelligence, super intelligence. I think would have to go up here. We'll just call it intellect for now, because I don't feel like spelling out the whole word. I think super intellect, like being, super poweredly strong, or super poweredly intelligent. I don't even think that's a word, but just having super intelligence, I feel like gets a bad rap because a lot of writers can't do it properly, right? Like The Boys, for example. Sister Sage was just an interesting character. I'll leave it at that. But having a super intellect like Reed Richards, Bruce Banner, somebody like that, where they're just super smart. I feel like that is honestly a very, very strong superpower. And I think it definitely should be higher on the list because you could solve a lot of problems with super intelligence. You could probably save the entire world, in fact, with super intelligence, which would be incredible. I feel like if you had super intelligence, you would never lose an election, right? Like you could just immediately find your way into power anywhere in the world if you were a super smart individual. But of course, what do I know? But super intellect for sure, I think goes into the S tier. And I believe that is going to do it for this super tier list. I hope you did enjoy this video, as it sounds like it's about to start raining here in a moment. But I hope you did enjoy. Thank you very much for watching. I hope to speak with you all again soon, and goodbye for now.